Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Ys 2 Chronicles Plus. In the last part, we've wrapped up our business at Rasteenie mine for now and cured Lily of her illness. But now we want to go explore a very specific house here in Lance Village, good old Gila's house. Hey you! Aren't you that adventurer guy who was resting over at Benoa's? You are? Perfect! Lately there have been some seriously creepy noises coming from my basement. It's been going on for a while now and it's driving me crazy. Since you're an adventurer and adventurers explore things, I was kind of hoping... Would you mind checking my basement for demons? Investigate the basement? Absolutely. Give it all you've got. This is required for plot, but I actually don't know precisely when it unlocks. You may let yourself into my basement whenever you wish. All I ask in return is that you please figure out what's going on down there. Thanks muchly, adventurer. Like, I'm not sure if, like, curing Lilia causes this to be available, if it's finding a certain item in Rasteenie mine, or if it's, like, doing a couple of statues in Rasteenie, and the Sanctuary Atoll, thusly. So, there's an ominous presence down here. What we want to do is go into our inventory, stay a good distance away from the weirdly textured brick wall, and use the evil bell, an ominous-looking bell shaped like a skull. It could summon demons. There was a distinct sense of something ominous on the other side of the wall. And thus, there's a shitload of monsters going to charge in and try to attack us. They are largely ones from the final floor of Rasteenie mine, and thus, if you're a bit lower on level, this can be kind of dangerous. And if you want to, for progress, you can just go through there and get to our destination. My best advice for right here is to kind of let them all kind of funnel out into the basement here until they start slowing down and then charging into the main part of the cave back there yourself. But I should note, the enemies here might seem infinite, but they actually are finite. You just have to let some spawn off screen and then charge back into them here and again. You'll get a text warning when it's about time for that. And this is good for experience grinding, of course, if you're lower level to begin with. But if you're trying to get all achievements, this is required. So if you're trying to do all that, make sure you do. I mean, hey, you might as well get the experience now. Good for long-term stuff. The demons in his immediate surroundings were vanquished, but Adol sensed more of them in the sanctuary beyond. Indeed, beyond Gila's basement is another section of the Sanctuary of Toll that you cannot access from Rasteenie mine directly to my memory. Adol's chaotic surroundings suddenly became calm and still. There was no further indication of the demonic presence. It seems as if all the demons have been eradicated. The two demons in here should in fact give you the text there, the achievement, as well as a good experience boost.
I am Priest Fact. Hear my words, you who have gathered the books of Ys. It is good that you have come. The demon's strength grows daily, and soon the powers we've been granted will be no more. They still function by the grace and protection of the goddesses, but their time grows to a close, bit by bit. If the demons are not stopped, their reign of chaos and destruction shall expand and consume the world entire. But you, warrior, may yet bring peace. Solomon's Shrine hides the source of all. Go there and put an end to he who governs this evil. A relic exists granted by the goddesses. It is known as the Scroll of Guidance. Each of the goddesses' statues is blessed by their will and favor. Stand before them and read it, and the way shall be made plain to see. First, find their graven image in Mundoria to receive their wisdom. For now, it is merely blank paper. But open it before the statues, and you'll be told what you must do.
And thus we get the Scroll of Guidance.
Now, the sealed door to the Solomon Shrine shall be opened.
A loud noise echoed from somewhere in the distance. So you might remember there was a door relatively early at the very start of the Sanctuary Atoll right after you first enter it. That door is now unlocked. But also we have the Scroll of Guidance, which if there's ever a goddess statue you see like the one over at the ruins of Mundoria, you can use it there to get a good hint on where to go next, or what to do next, roughly. I see you cleared the demons from my basement. Thank you so much. Now I can have some peace and quiet again. And, if you should ever need to come back, feel free. I'm in your debt, good sir. Your selfless noble actions have not gone unnoticed. So with that minor bit of character development out of the way, let's head back to the ruins of Mundoria and also take care of one other order of business over here. Now that we have the Matic, we can open up this wall right here that's marked with a crack and grab this chest that might have been taunting you since the start of the game. for the returning bestiary potion. Like in the last game, using this will make you able to see an enemy's stats, both on screen if you have the select button equipped like I do, or in the notebook. This also gets into the major thing for 100%. Every enemy has 6 stats. The first time you kill them, you get their name and picture in there. But after that, it is, I believe, 5 kills per stat, so 31 kills to get everything. Thankfully, the game actually keeps into account what you've killed up to this point. So if you killed an enemy 31 times already, they will already be completed in the notebook. But I just took a moment there to go grind out everything that we were missing in here so far, from the enemies, from the ruins of Mundoria through to the bottom of Rasteenie Mine. That took about 15 minutes or so at longest, I'd say. Not too long of a process, but good for the experience long term to do so.
So you aided in curing Lilia of her sickness. Very nicely done. But don't let this one success get to your head. Before your quest is over, there is much more to be done. Steel your courage and prepare to face the truth of the world. Your path will surely become clear.
As Adol unfurled the scroll of guidance, words began to appear on the blank faded parchment. To the one who reads this scroll, you are the last hero upon whom we, the 6 priests of East, place our hopes. The world now teeters on the brink of ruin. Our strength alone is not sufficient to stop the forthcoming catastrophe. We need the strength of a warrior. Please, journey to Solomon's Shrine. You will find statues of the goddesses scattered throughout the land. Stand before them and unfurl this scroll, and you shall regain their wisdom. Please, warrior, do what you must to reach Solomon's Shrine. As Adol read each word, it faded away. So, the Scroll of Guidance is effectively an automatically used key item to get hints from any goddess statue we see throughout the game. Not that there's many of them, but when you see one, you know you're going to get some pretty important information out of it. For right now, though, they also mentioned that another door here in the Sanctuary Toll had opened, and like I mentioned, it's the first door you run into coming in from the main entrance. With that said, I should note, especially if you're new to the game, before going down this absurdly long hallway, go max out your healing items, herbs or otherwise, using the trees and otherwise at Lance Village, because it's going to be good to have them around, even with the return spell in our arsenal.
So he's received the guidance of the priests, has he? Seems to have an excess of courage, that human. And what of the preparations for the ceremony? I see. Take the offering to the bell tower. I shall ring the bell. You are to keep the flow of sacrifices constant.
The young swordsman is perfected by the priests. Are you convinced yet that he may be a threat to our ambitions?
Goodbye, nice springtime temperatures of Lance Village. Hello, frigid winter of the Ice Ridge of Noltia. This area is a step up in complexity from what we've seen prior, as not only there are a lot of altitude layers to every single screen, there's also stairs to go up them, but ice slides to go down them that you cannot come back up, at the moment at least. On top of the enemies being stronger here, getting lost here is pretty easy to do, which honestly is a bit of a running theme with the latter 2/3 of Ys 2. With one very minor exception, it is very easy to get lost in these areas because they're very samey looking, but drawing a map can go a long way. Over here, though, we got ourselves the Blizzard Bulb. We're going to need that to progress relatively shortly here in the Ice Ridge. Admittedly, while it's easy to get lost in these areas, they do also a good job of limiting where you can go in these areas at first, and then slowly expanding the scale as you go through it. Kind of like, I don't want to say a Zelda dungeon outright, but that same general vibe. I definitely had a bit of a weird first impression with this area, and it's not exactly the game's fault. I was also just very tired when I first got here, both physically and a little bit of the game at that point, as I moved right from Ys 1 into Ys 2 immediately. And I forget if I beat Ys 1 in a single session or if it was like 2 on a single day. I beat the game very quickly in either regard. And I think by the time I got here, I was just a little burned out on running around as much as I could for enemies and all that quickly. So I think I ended up taking a break for a day or something in that range. Note to the Blizzard Bulb's description: if used in a moist atmosphere, the water will solidify. Well, this counts as a moist atmosphere right here, so solidify the water. creating ourselves a bridge to access the next section of the Ice Ridge. And next up, we actually want to go right where this enemy is right here, the Gurkhard, and go into this hidden cave for our next accessory, the Spirit Cape. This touches on something I actually forget if I've talked about in the game or not already. I definitely did back in Ys 1 though, but just to refresh in the case I haven't mentioned it. Adol restores his HP naturally just by standing still. And it goes up in an acceleration ramp, so the longer you stand still, the faster you'll recover HP. But if you're in dungeons, that doesn't work. Unless you have the Spirit Cape equipped. So now, in the case you don't have any healing items, or even magic to teleport out or a wing, the Spirit Cape can help you out of some very tight circumstances. And thankfully, while it does take a second for you to fully heal, it's never long enough to truly feel intrusive. As long as you're patient, of course. But even then, if you're good about avoiding enemies while going through areas and that you've been through back and forth in some cases, you might be able to get through without getting hit anyway. So it's really a matter of how you want to play the game. If you're super defensive and just want to sit a moment to heal, or super aggro and try to avoid things to get to your next destination. Oh, also, looking at the Egnid stats reminds me. Earlier, I went out of my way to go grind earlier enemies for their enemy notes back in like Rasteenie Mine and all that, because we have the bestiary potion now. The way I'm going to structure getting enemy notes moving forward in the LP is effectively how it worked back in Ys 1, where when I approach the end of an area, more or less, that's when I'm going to go do the grinding. For that, in the case I'm missing a lot of them, which I often will be. Very few times in the game will you naturally encounter enough of an enemy just going through it to complete their notes. Right here, though, we immediately get another accessory. This is the Hawk Idol. This one impacts the charge shot of your fire magic. In this case, it now gains some slight homing properties. A little awkward to work with, but in the case you're in a boss fight, you might as well equip it anyway, as most other accessories aren't going to be too useful in most boss fights. The Claria Ring will come in clutch here and again, but largely, you should have that on. Speaking of fire magic, here's a bunch of icicles that we now need to completely melt to get through here. This is one of my least favorite rooms in the game, as it takes a lot of your magic, and you need to do this every time you walk back through the area. Which, for how I play the game, usually means I'm doing this room 3 or so times, but if you aren't using the return magic by trying to maximize your experience or all that, this can get tedious real quick. Coming over here, though, in this chest is our 4th magic spell, the Altar Magic. Now, in a game with only 6 spells, they're all going to be pretty unique in how they work, but this one especially more so, as the description says. It makes Adol a Rue, letting him talk to demons. Every single demon in the game has its own unique text box. I saw some human being taken away by a flying demon. She was in a bit of a far off in the distance, but she seemed pretty from what I could tell. There are a lot of jokes and even hints on things to do hidden behind every unique monster in the game, to the point where if I showcased them all, the LP would probably genuinely be about at least 1.5 times as long. Due to that, I'm only really showcasing a few distinct lines throughout the game. But if you ever have the spare time or intrigue, go check out every single enemy along the way. You might see some funny stuff. With that said, when you transform into a Rue, your MP is slowly, constantly draining. So keep that in mind. But at the same time, that's also kind of a good thing because you can use the Rue effectively as a defense mechanism if you have high enough MP, as enemies do not attack you while you're a Rue in most cases. So in the case you're low on HP and healing items, and you don't want to use the teleport spell for some reason, you can use the Altar Magic and walk your way to your destination that way. Coming around here to this chest, though, we find ourselves the Stone Shoes. This is an item that, when equipped, allows you to actively walk up the ice slides we've seen throughout the Ice Ridge up to this point. For one thing, we need those to reach the boss door, as the boss door itself is at the top of one of those ice slides, but also, a nice added benefit is that having this Stone Shoes does open up new routes through the Ice Ridge more quickly. So in that regard, coming back to this area more than once actually gets a lot easier once you actually grab those. Thing I constantly forget, though, is that the Stone Shoes are not an accessory, they are in the inventory screen. Another game that has a very similar item, though, does place it in the equipment screen from memory, and that's why I got a little confused there. What? When Adol touched the door, his hand slipped inside it, and his fingers were numbed as if by an intense cold. Well, that's not gonna work, clearly. We need a different item in order to actively reach the boss fight here in the Ice Ridge. But at this point, I am going to go out of my way to go grind the enemies we've seen up to this point out, just to get the extra experience levels along the way, because for an obvious upcoming boss fight, they'll come in handy pretty quickly. I believe on this specific playthrough, I maxed out at here around level 24 before enemy experience just got very lackluster, on top of getting all the stats along the way. So the item we need in order to access the boss fight can be accessed from where I am right now, but it's genuinely just more straightforward to head back to Lance Village and re-enter the Ice Ridge to showcase where that is, as it gives a much more clear checkpoint from where you start. Additionally, there's also an achievement we can showcase around here now that we have the altar magic, and with the gold I've gained from the Ice Ridge of Noltia's enemies, on top of whatever grinding I did, I can now do another equipment upgrade in the final sword that the armor shop here has, the Talwar.
Now, is this not a work of art? The curved blade has an exceptionally fine cutting edge. Takes a fair degree of skill to use it, but you seem to know what you're doing. You'll pick up on it in no time. It's 5,000 gold and not a GP less.
Yes, please. And you know what? While we're here in town, even though it's not been that long since we last saw them, let's go talk to Benoa and Lilia and see what they got going on now that she's got her whole new lease on life and all that. Adol, have you seen my daughter? I'm saddened to say she's disappeared. I wonder where she could have gone. I hope she's all right. It's been 5 minutes. What do you mean she's disappeared? She left a little while ago, mentioned something about going to the ruins. She was seen briefly at the village gate, but not once since then. Oh, Lilia, where could you have gone? Great. Might as well take a rest while we're here because I was a little low on HP at that point, obviously. Let's ask around town, see if anyone has seen anything else, maybe? Have you heard? Apparently Lilia just vanished without a trace, and Bots hasn't come back from Rasteenie Mine either. We've had a peaceful life here in Ys for so many centuries. Why are all these calamities happening now? Oh, so 2 people are missing. Great.
Oh, Adol, it's terrible. Lilia's gone missing. Where could she have run off to? The demons are everywhere. She shouldn't be out here by herself. I suppose she did manage to beat a serious illness, though, so perhaps fortune favors her. It's little comfort, but it's all I have, so we're going to believe that she's going to be all right.
With that, worrying news in our minds now, we're going to head back to the ruins of Moondoria, as this is where the achievement in question I mentioned actively is. This one isn't anything really special, it's just a fun little Easter egg. But now that we have the altar magic, we want to head back all the way down to the bottom of the Sanctuary of Toll and Rasteenie Mine dual area here. In specific to the room where we got the evil bell earlier before we destroyed the monsters at Gila's basement. Now that we have the altar magic, we want to transform into the Rue form in there and talk to one of the monsters. Is this out of the way? Yes. But in the case you're trying to find all the achievements that aren't tied to difficulty or time attack mode, I figured I might as well showcase it, plus it only takes like a minute with editing and all that. It's that green lizard monster right there we want to talk to, so let's get the altar magic on and see what they have to say. You know, the whole point of hiding out in a secret room in an abandoned mine is not to be found. But congratulations nonetheless, it's really quite the achievement. Yeah! I briefly brought it up earlier in the LP, I believe. But this is why I like games referencing memes, because it makes them even more of a time capsule in a way I enjoy. CSI Miami, the show that is referencing, has been off the air as of this most recent April for 12 years. But there was a good couple of years you really could not escape that exact meme format, especially in the early days of Rage Comics on Facebook in like 2011 and 10. Ah, nostalgia. The only time I really don't think memes work is if you're referencing memes that are over a decade old at the time of release. And there's times where elongated game development can cause that to happen, admittedly, but there's times where it just is very distracting. I'm looking at you, bad boy. But worth noting, just for time release's sake, that meme is from around the early 2010s. This specific version of Ys 1 and 2 released in 2013. So, coming from the entrance over in this direction towards these Egnids, we find the Anti-Illusion Mirror. That is what we need in order to access the boss fight here in the Ice Ridge of Noltia. So now that we have that, we're going to go out of our way to head back that direction towards the false boss door and go fight the boss fight for the region. And just because it's a decent distance at this point, a lot of up and down, we're just going to speed this process up. We are going to make one stop along the way, though, as now that we have the stone shoes, there is one other thing we can investigate here on the Ice Ridge, and it gives some decent information, so we might as well do that. In specific, once you reach this specific section, go up the first ice slide, and there's another goddess statue. As Adol unfurled the scroll of guidance, words began to appear on the blank, faded parchment. Great warrior, you've done well in reaching the Ice Ridge of Noltia. You must find the true door which will allow you to get through Noltia's ice-covered outer wall. The one that you see is a mere illusion spawned by a magical barrier. If you could somehow reflect the truth, the real door shall appear before you. Please, warrior, do what you must to reach Solomon's Shrine. So that's the hint for needing the anti-illusion mirror in specific, hence the term reflect being used there and all that, as well as there being a secondary boss door over there. So theoretically, you're meant to find that before you find the mirror, but I know the mirror is there, so I grab it first and find that on the way back in most cases. So with that done and out of the way, let's speed our way once again on over to the boss arena, because we've already seen where that is, but I might as well keep the footage in just in case you're a little lost. So right here, we want to use the anti-illusion mirror. A beautifully decorated mirror with the power to dissolve illusions. It was brightly shimmering, but if we use it right in front of this specific door, Adel held the mirror to the door. Even though he could see it with his own eyes, it cast no reflection. Suddenly, the mirror gave off a dazzling light. That is the real boss door, so make sure at this point that you heal up your HP using the Spirit Cape and save, because it's time for, once again, another boss fight. You want to make sure you have the Hawk Idol on as well as the Fire Magic in order to make this a little simpler. Boss fight of the Ice Ridge is Tyalmath. This fight jumps around all over the place, and every other jump or so it'll send a gigantic spread of icicles out from underneath it until they hit a wall. There's usually 5 or 6 of them. They're not always in a direct star formation. Sometimes they'll home in a little more on you, but this is where using the Hawk Idol comes in handy, as it'll help you with accuracy in the fight. With that said, if you have the levels we have and all that, you can drain its HP pretty quickly. If you come this way around the room, you can come up to where it started the boss fight and find an extra 1,000 gold. Haha, your hoard is mine now, boss fight. But with that, I'm gonna need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 5, now that we're done with the Ice Ridge, we're gonna let things heat up a little bit. See you guys then.